And good morning. Welcome to Community Watch and Comment, the Wednesday edition. I'm your host, David Whetstone. This Wednesday, October 19th, here on WPFW, your Jazz and Justice radio station, 89.3. This year past, as in recent years, represents a pretty distinct period in the area of black literature. It's been a hallmark year of bestsellers and notorieties in the parts of black writers. And our topic today will be the importance of the black writer in present-day America and the diaspora. Black writers represent so much to their communities and to themselves. They give voice, agency, identity, inclusiveness, history, memory, public service, and justice, all a part of their efforts. That is the black writer. Mr. Dargan, you covered a lot of ground, and forgive me, I got a little anxious here and I didn't really introduce you in full. You're the author of 4 collections of poetry. I've had the pleasure of looking at your latest book, Honest Engine, and you also teach at a American University, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I direct the creative writing program at American University in D.C. Yeah.
Okay. And I want to ask you, since you're the focus on your own discipline for a moment, you mentioned Nikki Finney, and we can mention, of course, Rita Dove, Tracy Smith.
Yeah.
There are a number of authors, and some of your colleagues that'll be honored at the Legacy Awards will be Vivi Francis. Let me see here.
Angela Jackson, Terrence Hayes, Ross Gay.
Thank you.
Robin Cost Lewis.
So there's without doubt a great body of black poets that are available to us today. We live under the legacy of Langston Hughes and Paul Laurence Dunbar and others. But for black poets today, poetry is not a section that's often emphasized in a bookstore, for instance. That's deals with popular culture. It's maybe some of the independent bookstores that bring us this poetry. And a lot of university presses publish poets as well. What would you say as far as how can black communities and avid readers, young and old, access the world of black poets?
One place now which is doing huge work, not just for poets of African descent, but all poets, is, the internet. Really, you can't be reading poetry now and not be on the Poetry Foundation website, or not be on, the Hurston Wright website, or the Academy of American Poets, which has a program called Poem a Day, which publishes, a poem that it sends out by email to, 70,000 plus readers.
We're joined by Dr. Natalie Hopkinson and Darlene Taylor. Ms. Taylor is the chair of the Hurston Wright Foundation, and they are the ones that are holding really a notable literary event in this country, the Legacy Awards, this Friday. Good morning, Ms. Taylor. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Pleasure to have you. And since we're in the press of this fund drive, I'm just going to be unabashed and ask you, tell us a little bit about the Legacy Awards and about the Hurston Wright Foundation.
Absolutely. So, the Zora Hurston Richard Wright Foundation is 26 years old this year, and this is our 15th annual Legacy Award. The Hurston Wright Foundation was founded by Marita Golden, a celebrated author and Washingtonian, and Clyde McIlvaine, a bibliophile, a man who loved storytelling, a man who took pride in the wonderful stories of black writers, and together they came together with a mission of celebrating 2 of America's literary genius, and that's Zora Hurston and Richard Wright, and bringing that together under the umbrella of this foundation with a mission of mentoring, nurturing, educating, introducing new writers, discovering new writing by black writers, and bringing it to the broader community of readers, but really also just kind of giving those writers the space that they need, the encouragement that they need, the support that they need, and importantly, the recognition that they need that the work is essential.
So speaking of recognition, you're recognizing two distinct and important authors, one of a long career and one of a more recently short career, Ernest Gaines and Junot Diaz. What do you hope in recognizing them and other nominees for your awards, and we'll get to that, what do you hope the impact of the Legacy Awards would be, particularly since it's situated here in Washington, D.C.?
Well, Ernest Gaines has been recognized by the President of the United States with a Medal of Art. President Obama welcomed him to the White House and put that wonderful ribbon around his neck for this wonderful work that he has given us, and definitely my generation and the generation of our children that were sharing the work that he did. The story of Miss Jane Pittman, that autobiography of Jane Pittman, A Lesson Before Dying, A Gathering of Old Men. His storytelling comes out of rural Louisiana, a place that he knew very well, and a place where probably many stories had not been told, or had been told among ourselves but hadn't been told to the broader community. And with his writing, with his pen, with his typewriter, with the publishing of those works, he brought those lives, the dignity of those people, the wants of those people to the world. And he was recognized for that work. Junot Diaz, the same. I think that what they both do so well is shed a light on there's not one America. There's many communities and families and stories in America, and they're world stories. People care about it. These stories matter. So Ernest Gaines will be receiving our North Star Award, which pays homage to the significance of the North Star for enslaved Africans who look to that star as a guide to freedom. The honorees are folks who writing and service to...
And welcome back to Community Watch and Comment, the Wednesday edition. I'm your host, David Whetstone. With me in the studio is Dr. Natalie Hopkinson. Dr. Hopkinson, I introduced you earlier as being a professor in the graduate program of Communication, Culture, and Media Studies at Howard, as the author of Deconstructing Tyrone, which you did with Natalie Moore, and Go Live. And you've got an upcoming book called A Mouth is Always Muzzled. Good morning. Thank you for being with us. I tried my best with a little bit of stumbling to just talk about how authors are popping out all over the place in the last few years, particularly black writers. They're culturally significant, but they are handled by publishers. Their works are conveyed by publishers. What are some of the trends that you see going on in the publishing world and dealing with authors of African descent?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you so much for having me here, and thank you, WPFW, for being here. There's a wonderful link between radio listeners and book readers. Radio listeners are wonderful readers, and so really been so supportive of authors in general. So I'll speak really broadly about the publishing industry. So I'm actually teaching an Intro to Mass Comm class this semester, and one of the statistics that popped out of the text that we're reading over at Howard is publishing statistics. So, I think there's conventional wisdom. People don't like to read anymore. Publishing is dead. Bookstores are dead.
We have short attention spans because of technology.
Blah, blah, blah. Well, this statistic really popped out at me. So publishing is actually bigger than ever between audio books, ebooks. Of course, the Kindle really has sparked a whole new area of growth for the publishing industry. So all of that adds up to these two statistics that I was pretty surprised at in a good way. In the mid 80s, the total sale revenues for publishing was $9 billion. And when you looked at the figures for 2010, which was the most recent figures that we looked at in the text, it had actually grown to $27 billion. So that's a pretty big pot of money that's out there. And it really is a testament to how the enduring significance of the publishing industry. And so that's why it's really important to have, events like the Hurston Wright and organizations like the Hurston Wright, so that to make sure that our authors are also well represented.
Talking about well representation, there is something that I'm mindful of, at least for the last 2 decades, if not a little more, that some of the black writers of note were self-published. What would you say about that? You can hear a little suspicion here in my voice, but I'll explain that in a moment. What do you want to say about black writers being self-published?
I think it's a wonderful, liberating avenue for many writers to get their voices out. We do not have to wait for somebody in some corner office to decide that to validate you as a writer and validate your ideas. And, it's something that we see within black culture at all. Like if Tyler Perry waited for somebody to, that's probably a different topic, right? And I also have strong feelings about that. But what you can acknowledge and appreciate is the fact that they're breaking down the barriers and breaking into the room so that they wouldn't be otherwise. So I consider self-publishing is along the same, like Elin Harris, who was one of the very early supporters of the Hurston Wright Foundation. I remember the very first Legacy Awards.
Very important to the Washington community.
Very important. And as some of us remember, he was selling that book, going to beauty shops, barber shops, beauty salons, hand to hand. He was really selling it, a la Master P or Tyler Perry or whatever, however you want to call that circuit. And then the mainstream publishing industry ended up pulling him in. But it's wonderful. It's a wonderful opportunity for us to validate ourselves instead of waiting for somebody else to validate us.
Okay, and writers are present with us. They're going to be courtesy of the Hurston Wright Foundation right here Thursday. And I want to emphasize that Thursday, October 20th at Busboys and Poets in Tacoma and at Busboys and Poets at 14th and V. And some of these names are not unfamiliar to you. Harriet A. Washington, Dr. Washington, has just written a book called Infectious Madness that deals with how physiological illnesses plus social pressures trigger mental illness. That's not a subject that's not uncommon to some of the programming that you get here at WPFW. That is why I'm asking you to support the station. One of our favorite historians to many, many listeners, Gerald Horn. He's going to be at the Tacoma location of Busboys and Poets on Thursday at 6:30. He is a nominee in the Hurston Wright Legacy Awards. He is nominated for his book, Confronting Black Jacobins, showing the linkages between the U.S., Haiti, and the Dominican Republic, and doing it in a voice and with facts that you can't get anywhere else. These are the